They were ordinary men and women, called to extraordinary deeds, united by a common purpose, to defend freedom and uphold the dignity of humanity. This is the story of World War II, told through the voices of those who lived to tell it. From the bombers and fighter pilots who braved freezing altitudes, the soldiers who stormed the beaches of Normandy in the largest land invasion in history, to the African-American men and women who shattered barriers on the front lines. This is their legacy, one told by those whose fight for victory did more than just end the war. It cemented the foundation of a superpower, laying the groundwork for the freedoms and opportunities we cherish today. For Palm Springs Air Museum Productions, I'm Joe Mantegna, and this is Voices of Valor, World War II heroes in their own words.
I repeat that the United States can accept no result save victory, final, complete.
From the skies over Berlin to the deserts of North Africa, Allied bombers and pilots played a pivotal role in securing victory during World War II. Their efforts in achieving air superiority and supporting ground operations were vital to the success of the Allies. It is through the stories of these extraordinary brave heroes whose courage defied the odds that we are reminded of the perilous challenges they faced and the valor with which they met. Roger Krakow excelled at geography in high school and would later put that to good use as a B-17 bomber navigator in World War II.
This is a flag that they gave to us. We flew over Russia so that in case we would make a forced landing, we would show this so they wouldn't shoot us.
I suppose the vast majority had joined the Air Force expecting to see exciting action, and it must have been, indeed I know it was a pretty horrifying awakening for them to find that they were in fact destined to sit in turrets, very cold, very frightened, sometimes for 6, 7, and 8 hours on end.
Roger flew a grueling 35 bombing missions before the war's end, including the massive February 3rd, 1945 bombing attack on Berlin.
There were almost 1,000 B-17s. Again, it was very memorable to see there were 30-some squadrons. The flak was the main problem, which was very, very heavy. We were the second to last squadron to go over. And I think that the Germans were tired, they were running out of ammunition, so it wasn't quite as heavy as a first group.
The flak had several different threats. One is, of course, the damage from the flak itself, because when it explodes, it throws steel particles in all directions. And we were virtually flying through clouds of flying steel when we were over the target. If it didn't explode near us, we'd feel the flak hit the airplane. And when it hit a wing spar or another structural member, the aircraft would go boom. And then we'd also hear the flak hitting the rest of the airplane. It hit fuel lines, hit gas tanks. I've seen airplanes blow up. And then trying to put on a flak suit at the last minute, pilots would lose a little control. Sometimes they'd collide with the guy next to them. I've seen that happen several times, and both those aircraft would just go down.
When we had a loss, a good loss, we'd have a real good loss. I mean, we just didn't see that there was any in between. We had real loss, they just wiped us out, and we probably could start over. One airplane survived, that was me. Now during that time, by that time of the war, we were able to put up almost 2 groups. So one group survived, but the other group, my group, didn't. And I was the only one to come back from that group. Not a squadron, a group.
During World War II, under the leadership of such generals as Ira Eaker and Jimmy Doolittle, the then 8th Air Force formed the greatest air armada in history. By mid-1944, the unit had a total strength of more than 200,000 people, and it could send more than 2,000 four-engine bombers and 1,000 fighters on a single mission against enemy targets in Europe. For this reason, 8th Air Force is commonly known as the Mighty 8th.
It was scary and chaotic. It was traumatic when you're in the heat of battle and anti-aircraft fires coming up from the ground to knock you out of the sky. These enemy fighters are coming in and attacking you from all angles. All hell's breaking loose. It's scary. It's just riveting. So, but you're flying in close formation at high altitude, freezing to death, because we were unpressurized. At our high altitude, at 50 to 60 degrees below zero, if you take your gloves off, your fingers can self-amputate to the nearest knuckle. And you don't see any blood, you don't feel any pain, you're not even aware. You just see your fingers lying on the floor.
Very few people know this. A B-17 was equipped with a Norden bomb sight. Why? For precision bombing. The only way I can tell you this is like the Arch in St. Louis. That would be the specific target. Well, Eisenhower and Churchill and so forth decided to go away from precision bombing and go to pattern bombing. What's pattern bombing? What it is the lead ship in a squadron has the Norden bomb sight. When he opens his bomb bay doors, I open mine, as well as all the others. When you see the first bomb come out, you release yours. And what we did was dropped on the center of Berlin, Munich, Dresden. And unfortunately, it killed many thousands of civilians. But it is known that because of this, the World War II ended about a year earlier. Germany was leveled. Can you imagine the entire city of Chicago or St. Louis looking like that?
July 31st, 1944, we're 27,000 feet over Munich. And about 10 seconds after I dropped the bombs, a burst of flak hit right under us, knocked out 2 engines, one on each side. And a piece of flak came through the bottom of the plane. The pilots had on armor seats, maybe a 1/4 inch thick, went through there, went through the co-pilot's left thigh way up here, left hole about the size of a baseball, and out the roof. Well, I was the medical officer of the group, so I went up and gave him a shot of morphine. It was still in flak, so I could leave my guns, and gave him a shot of morphine, sprinkled salt on his wounds. And on 2 engines, you can't keep up with the formation, and you're sitting duck. And we were attacked by fighters, so I had to go back to my guns again. But a squadron of P-51s came and drove them off. But the only thing that saved them was 40 degrees below zero. The blood froze as it came out. So while I was back to my guns, he was not bleeding. We tried to go in Switzerland. It was just 70 miles away from Munich, and it was fogged in, so we could not. So we threw everything overboard that we could. For the last 3.5 hours, I gave him another shot of morphine and kept pressure on his wound with the gauze and bandage, trying to keep the bleeding from being too much. So he survived. In fact, I got a note from him a year later, and thought he'd be in the hospital another 2 years. He had a cast from his chest to his toes. But he was wrong. He was there 4 years and 22 operations later, and he did survive, though.
The B-17 Memphis Belle is one of the most famous American bombers from World War II, known for being the first U.S. Army Air Force's heavy bomber to complete 25 combat missions over Europe without losing a crew member. A Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, the Memphis Belle, was part of the 91st Bomb Group and was named after pilot Robert K. Morgan's girlfriend, Margaret Polk, who was from Memphis, Tennessee. The aircraft flew dangerous bombing raids over Nazi-occupied territories, targeting factories, military installations, and other strategic points. Completing 25 missions was a significant achievement, as losses among bomber crews were high. After its service, the Memphis Belle and its crew were brought back to the United States to help raise war bonds and boost morale. This B-17 is the Memphis Belle from the 1990 movie of the same name. Lieutenant Colin S. Bell joined the Royal Air Force at a very young age of just 19. His flying training was actually conducted here in the United States under a plan devised by General Henry Hap Arnold.
I have no hesitation in saying that my survival during World War II owed quite a bit in part to that fantastic training and experience I gained while I was in America.
After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Colin was transferred back to the UK, where he transitioned to the de Havilland Mosquito, known for its speed and agility.
There were mosquitoes engaged in photo reconnaissance. They were used as night fighters. They were used in coastal command for attacking submarines. They were used as bombers, high level, low level. It could do anything that a single engine fighter could do, but of course it had two Spitfire engines, so as my American cousins would say, no contest.
During World War II, Lieutenant Bell undertook 50 dangerous bombing raid missions in the Mosquito over Germany, 13 over heavily armored Berlin.
The whole purpose of Bomber Command was to destroy the German manufacturing capacity to attack us. We attacked the Peenemünde base, caused so much damage there that when the commandant, who was dining with Hitler, heard about it, he came down, and when he saw the damage, it caused him such alarm that he had a seizure and fell down dead, which I thought was deeply satisfying.
So Colin, here we are next to the nose of our Mosquito B-35, the bomber version.
That's right.
And of course you would have been sitting up there on the left-hand side, and your
That's
seat
right.
just there. And I believe that your navigator, Doug Redman, would have had to lean forward here into the nose to aim the bombs. Is that correct?
That's absolutely. As bomb aimer, he would sort of move forward to connect up with the Mark 9A bomb sight. And he had the unenviable task of looking ahead of the exploding shells, anti-aircraft shells.
The Flying Tigers were American volunteer pilots known as the AVG, American Volunteer Group, flying under the command of retired U.S. Army Air Corps officer Claire L. Chenault in the Pacific Theater. In the early stages of World War II, they were the first to bring fame to the P-40 Warhawk, arriving in China in April 1941 with their first combat action on December 20th, 1941, just 13 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Flying Tigers pilot Whitey Johnson was one of those men.
They apparently were concerned about American invasion, so had brought in over 100 fighters, and they were all staged at that field, and they were lined up in beautiful rows because they didn't think we could have enough range to get there and back. And we came in at about 50 or 60 miles out, which would be beyond their radar. And then we dove down to treetop level. And we got to the field, to the airport that we were going to be strafing. There were soldiers standing out in the fields waving at us, apparently thinking that we were Japanese coming in from Formosa, until we start shooting, of course. And that first raid, we destroyed, I think it was 94 Japanese planes on the ground, and I believe 3 in the air that was just taking off. So it was probably the most successful raid of the war.
The P-40 was in production from 1939 to 1944. Approximately 14,000 of various models were built. The famous Shark P-40 aircraft and their pilots destroyed a record 286 enemy aircraft at a loss of 23 pilots. It was a capable, rugged aircraft and kept us in the air war, but it was not the aircraft which could control the skies for the U.S. Army Air Corps. Control of the sky began when the P-40 was replaced by the faster, higher performance P-38, P-47, and P-51 fighters.
Known for its agility, speed, and impressive range, the P-51 Mustang became a game changer in the air war over Europe. Equipped with long-range fuel tanks, it could escort heavy bombers deep into enemy territory, providing essential protection against German fighters. The Tuskegee Airmen, most associated with flying Mustangs marked by their distinctive red tails, became highly respected for their skill and bravery. This P-51, affectionately named Bunny, was owned by Tuskegee Airman Bob Friend.
Tuskegee Airman Bob Friend was a distinguished fighter pilot and one of the original members of the all-black 332nd Fighter Group during World War II.
He was also a dear friend and the man who gave me this jacket.
Bob flew 142 combat missions, protecting bombers on vital missions across Europe without losing a single one to enemy aircraft, a record that helped to earn the group their legendary reputation.
When the war started, if anybody had asked me, why are you fighting this war? I said, because I'm as much a part of this country as you. Some people just don't know how to accept changes. And this did represent changes for a lot of people. I believe that in and everybody that flew over there in Tuskegee really and truthfully felt equal to the job. And that's a big, big, big part of survival. You gotta go out and prove yourself. Not for race. I go out and I prove myself for me.
Tens of thousands of African Americans served as soldiers, sailors, and Marines, usually in segregated units. Their accounts reveal not only the precision and skill required, but the camaraderie and resolve that defied history.
In the Army Air Corps' 99th Fighter Squadron and 332nd Fighter Group, now better known as the Tuskegee Airmen, African-American pilots distinguished themselves over North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. The Tuskegee Airmen flew over 3,000 missions in Europe and destroyed almost 300 enemy planes. For their service, Tuskegee Airmen were awarded 150 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 744 Air Medals, 8 Purple Hearts, and 14 Bronze Stars. Tuskegee Airman Lieutenant Colonel Ted Lumpkin Jr. is one of those famous men that wrote history. He served as an air intelligence officer during his overseas combat tour to Italy in the Western Europe theater from 1944 to 1945.
I like that business of courage of your heart, because that means everybody is starting from the same place. And I think it's important to always be trying to do the best that you can. In that way, you don't have regrets. the Tuskegee Airmen experience illustrates that. It demonstrates that and illustrates that in a very positive way.
The Tuskegee Airmen, it was a unique group. Prior to World War II, African Americans were not given the opportunity to train as pilot or air crew members. And it wasn't until World War II that this opportunity was afforded these pilots, but only under the condition that they train and serve as segregated units. The effort at the time was to prove ourselves that we were on par with any other conscripts that were brought in to train as pilots. I think we did succeed, and I think we did prove ourselves.
When we got out of the service, we came back to a country that we had left. All the freedoms we accomplished or supported away from this country were not available to us when we came back. So we were quite often asked why we did it. And the answer pretty much is the same for all of us. We did it because this is our country. You know, we may have been treated as second-class citizens, but this was our country.
You might say that as you look back on the whole thing, once given the opportunity, we just dispelled the biases and generalization and thought some racist thoughts that because of happenstance of birth, we were less than a full citizen and those physically qualified but mentally and morally inferior to the white man. We dispelled those things once given the opportunity.
In 2007, more than 60 years after their combat in World War II, President George W. Bush awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to surviving Tuskegee Airmen in a ceremony in the Capitol Rotunda.
And I would like to offer a gesture to help atone for all the unreturned salutes and unforgivable indignities. And so on behalf of the office I hold and a country that honors you, I salute you for the service to the United States of America.
The valor of World War II heroes extends to those who didn't carry a gun or fly a fighter.
Like medics, translators, engineers, postal workers, and code breakers, who shone through their courage, saving lives and enduring victory through skill, ingenuity, and selfless service.
In their words, we hear the echoes of resilience and hope that sustained nations through war. Their voices tell a story of quiet dedication, proving that heroism isn't confined to the battlefield. Elizabeth Bernice Barker Johnson served with the 688th Central Postal Directory Battalion, the only all-black, all-female unit deployed overseas in World War II, working tirelessly to clear a massive backlog of mail and boost morale for troops on the front lines.
Well, I just decided I wanted to do something to help out. I wasn't working. My parents were aged, and I just decided I wanted to do something to help out. We had a rural mail carrier. I went to the mailbox and got the mail, came back and sat down and was looking through it. And there was one paper that had a picture of a man on it saying, "Uncle Sam wants you." And I just threw it to the floor, looked through the rest of the mail. Then I looked down at the picture again, and I said, kept looking at it, and I said, well, just maybe Uncle Sam's got you. And from that point on, I proceeded to do the process of trying to get in. I worked with the mail once I got to France. And we had mail stacked almost to the ceiling. And we just worked, we didn't have a set number of hours. You just worked until you were too tired to do anything more. We had a list of the new addresses of the people to whom we were supposed to send the mail. If their old address was on it, we had to change it to the new address and put it in the post office.
There were supposed to have been 2 to 3 years of mail backed up. As servicemen were not getting And so, of course, she created the slogan, "No mail, low morale," because, you know, they had no way of keeping in touch with their families, didn't know what was happening. They didn't know what was happening from home.
They said that we got it out in record time. We did it in about 3 months. And they didn't expect it to be done for at least 6 months. But we did it because we were working 3 shifts a day, you know.
When we ran across the list, we found that some of the people were dead, and it was our responsibility to look at a special list and get the gifts back to whoever sent them to them. So that was quite a job.
Lydia Van Vogt was born in 1927 in the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea. She escaped along with her family following the Russian Civil War, living in Romania, Poland, and finally in Munich, Germany. Lydia lived in Munich during much of World War II. The bombings and friends dying around her became part of daily life and her own survival.
Oh, it was bombing. We were running to shelter, and the bombs was falling, but I was very fast runner, so I got to the shelter. Some people were killed. Yeah, some were, but they're running, the bomb was falling, and they were killed. I cry.
When the war finally came to an end, Lydia was hired by then General Eisenhower as a translator because she spoke 5 languages.
We went to camps, and they didn't speak, English, none of them. We went to work in camps, I translate for him. He didn't speak German. So, in those camps, they had Russians, Polish, Germans, French, they had all nationalities, so I translate there. They were bad. People were just some were on the floor, some were sweeping places. It was a bad situation there. Even Eisenhower, he kind of had a little tears in his eyes, so to see that. So me too, scary.
Marcella LeBeau, a Native American nurse from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, bravely served on the front lines during D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge, providing critical care to wounded soldiers under harrowing conditions.
Every day on the radio, there was a call for nurses in the military. They needed nurses. So we listened to that for a while, and then we decided that, yes, we would join the Army. So Marie and I, we went to the Red Cross, filled out an application, and Marie put my name down to go with. I put her name down to go with. We were like a couple of weeks at Wales, and then they sent us to Leominster, England. At Leominster, England, we had a barracks-type hospital, and we prepared for D-Day. And so we were preparing for D-Day, and for the fact that I was a psychiatric nurse in the United States, they assigned me again to the psychiatric wards. And so we were seeing patients there in the psych wards, and there were soldiers who couldn't see, some couldn't hear, and so they gave them sodium amytal narcosis, and then they could see or they could hear. We were preparing our ward, getting all ready, and we had time on our hands waiting. And during the time that we were waiting, there were times when you'd look up in the sky and you could see the sky absolutely filled with silver planes, as far as you could see in every direction. What a beautiful sight and so much power.
It was those serving on the front lines of World War II who endured some of the harshest conditions soldiers could ever face in combat. Among the Allied forces, whether dropping from the skies or storming the beaches, the courage and determination of these soldiers were unmatched. Paratroopers were elite troops who were dropped behind enemy lines to disrupt operations and seize key objectives, often facing intense combat upon landing.
Machine gunners provided essential support, delivering suppressive fire to protect advancing infantry and counter enemy assaults. Frontline infantry soldiers engaged directly with enemy forces, enduring the harshest combat conditions in trenches and open fields. Electricians were vital in maintaining communication systems, often working under fire. Dive bombers performed precision attacks on enemy targets, contributing to both ground and naval warfare by destroying key installations and armor.
Each of these roles was integral to the overall war effort, operating in dangerous conditions to push the front lines toward victory.
I got in the shore, and there was this little berm. I had 2 MG 42 machine guns shooting at me from opposite ends of the cliff, and they had me under fire. But that little berm's 6-8 inches tall. It was like a godsend for me. It was my protector. That's when I got a cigarette out of my pack that didn't get wet. I sensed someone to my left. So I says, "Buddy, have you got a match?" And I got no answer. So I turned. There was his helmet, but there was no head under the helmet.
One of my friends described what it's like to go from being a loader to being a gunner in a tank. He and I had done the same thing. When you're loading, you don't know what you're shooting at. No idea what you're shooting at. All you do is just keep slamming shells in and put the 30 caliber machine gun bullets in the machine gun. But then when you move from that seat over into the gunner seat, you got the crosshairs. And the first time you have to pull that trigger or step on the trigger in a Sherman, you knew you were going to kill somebody. And it wasn't easy. But after you've done that a few times and they shot back and I lost the tank, then it was a different story altogether.
But we really didn't have time to think much. It was just stay alive, get up in the morning, go all day, stand guard an hour, sleep an hour at night, same thing the next day, town after town after town.
That morning, the fog was all the way down to the ground. You couldn't see anything. As daylight comes, the fog starts to lift a little bit, and the more time went on, the more the fog lifted, but it lifted in like a bank. As it lifted, you could see underneath it all the way through that what was in front of us was a sort of tapering open field with the heavy woods on both sides, and the noise we heard, it looked like the Germans were going to attack across an open field. We said, boy, they must be cocky, you know. But they were cocky. They had just smashed 4 American divisions, and they expected to do the same thing. They didn't know it was the 101st Airborne Division there in Bastogne. So they, as the fog lifted higher and higher, then you hear the tanks wind up, and you could see across that still open snow field the grinding of the 88s as they swing around, and then the whole world sounded like it exploded. Everything you could imagine. There were rockets, artillery. Later on, the Luftwaffe came in and bombed it. Mortars, all around it. And you can't do anything except stick your nose down to the bottom of the foxhole and hope that you curse yourself for not digging it deeper. And the ground shakes, and sometimes the concussion makes you feel like your helmet's going to come off. That's when they told us right away, don't fasten your helmet buckle, because if you get a near concussion, it's going to pull your head right off. At any rate, we could do nothing but wait till the artillery barrage lifted. And when it did, and we looked across the field, here comes a row of tanks and behind them, German infantry. When they got to the 400-yard mark, the lieutenant said, now. And we opened up with everything we had. And it was a slaughter. The snow turned red. They were falling by the numbers and so on. And we hit them so bad that they weren't expecting that they had to turn around and go back. What was left of them. The tanks now, when the infantry's not behind them, they got to turn around and go back. The tanks turned around to go back. Our artillery opened up.
I was assigned to dive bomber training, so I went to school to learn to be a dive bomber, where you go into a dive at 15,000 feet and you release at 2,000 feet, and you pull out, you gray out, you can't see, but you're conscious and you pull out, and then gradually your sight returns again. In the beginning it was a little hairy, but after a while it was routine. Dive bombing was a piece of cake.
I had so many holes in my airplane, and they shot a wing off, a wingtip, and they knocked out my monitors up here where the ignitions were, so I couldn't turn the engines off. So I said, well, I'm going to starve them with gasoline. So I turned the gas off, filled out a novel in the Form 1 error, what I thought was wrong with the airplane, all the little holes, bullet holes from a machine pistol. So we were low, and my crew chief said, we've got the measles. I looked at my airplane the next day with the new little pieces of aluminum, and until they painted them, it looked like hell. But when they painted them, all that disappeared. Plane looked back to normal, including the wingtip.
Immediately after graduating from Georgia Tech in 1942, Floyd Blair enlisted in the U.S. Army and eventually served as a P-47 fighter pilot in the 404th Fighter Group. Blair flew support missions for ground troops on Omaha and Utah beaches on D-Day and had a bird's-eye view of the carnage taking place on the beaches below.
We were flying and we were down below 10,000 feet, and they had told us about these tanks, and I could see them. And I rolled over, and my wingman went with me. And there were a lot of us in the air that day. And I rolled the airplane to get aim more for the tanks and pulled out. Literally, I was under 100 feet. I was going almost 500 miles an hour. And I just barely made it. My wingman flew straight in the ground. And that still bothers me to this day. If you read the official record, everybody said he got hit by flak, but I know better than that. I shouldn't tell you that, but I do.
The Thunderbolt was the most famous of all the Republic aircraft in World War II. First flown on May 6, 1941, the P-47 was designed as a then large, high-performance fighter bomber, utilizing the large Pratt & Whitney R-2800 double wasp engine to give it excellent performance and a large load-carrying capability. The first deliveries of the P-47 took place in June 1942, when the U.S. Army Air Corps began flying it in the European theater. The P-47 performed missions of 4 to 5 hours, escorting B-17 and B-24 bombers directly to the target over Germany. On D-Day, The P-47 was the predominant fighter chosen for this difficult and critical operation. Arthur Mick Dawson was just shy of his 11th birthday in September 1939 when Great Britain declared war on Nazi Germany.
This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
And when the broadcast ended, they all filed out of the house and said, "Goodbye, Harry, thank you." And the first other noise I heard was my mother. She had her face in her hands crying, "Oh no, not again."
By 1942, at only 14 years old, his education came to an abrupt end as the country focused on the war effort. With an airfield being built in his village, Mick found work as a trainee electrician, a job he held until 1946, when he was called to serve in the British Army.
The master sergeant of the catering squadron, driving down the road in his Jeep, saw me with my bicycle and some cable on the handlebars, and he stopped. "Hey guy, come here, I need you. I need some cable. I need some lamp holders to put Christmas tree lights in the mess hall." So I had to go back to our office, and I was rather naughty. I found the key for the storeroom, got the cable we needed and the lamp holders, took them back to the mess hall, and I wired up about 12 lights and put them on the tree. He had the bulbs, and when he switched them on, there must have been about 300 or 400 guys eating chow. The whole crowd stood up and applauded and shouted and sang carols. It was wonderful.
Norman Lawrence Sirota, a glider pilot, survived a horrific crash on the eve of the Normandy invasion. These silent wing glider planes were used in 8 of the largest assaults during World War II.
I think glider pilots were unique in character. Their only mission was just to serve their country. They flew these planes without engines. There were no second chances. Once they went up, that was it. They were on their mission, and it was just to serve their country. And I think that took a certain type of constitution to fly, and the bravery that was needed for those missions. And I think that's very much how my father was as an individual, as a man. He wasn't in it for the glory. It was a sense of duty, and he wanted to serve his country.
He was extraordinary mathematician. The numbers were everything for him. He could have figured out any problem, any place, anywhere. We used to call him Einstein. He was really talented, that he was really extraordinary human being.
So my father he had completed training. He was ready to actually ship out to Europe. And this was actually the day before he shipped out to go to Europe. And he had been a great pilot, and he was often asked sometimes to volunteer and to take other pilots up who needed to log more hours.
It was late evening, and he flew the first time. He went up, and then the captain said, "You gotta try one more time." So then they went one more time. I don't know what happened. Even he doesn't know what happened. The only thing Norma remembers say, "We're going down, we're going down, oh, we're going down," and they crashed.
Fortunately or unfortunately, he never made it to Europe. He woke up in an Army hospital 2 weeks later with some pretty bad injuries, and he was honorably discharged. I think it was his biggest regret that he didn't get to go and fight in his last mission and do what he was supposed to do. He always said it was a huge regret of his. And I think it's common among a lot of men who serve. They have something called survivor's guilt, and I think it haunted him for the rest of his life. He really wanted to do that, and he felt that he was meant to do that, and he didn't get a chance. But I think that he was given a second chance at life, because most of the men on his mission did not return.
He lived his entire life with the guilt of his guys going behind the lines, and he knew that 50% of them by every would be killed, and he tried to find them.
And they used to change family names, family addresses, and they say, when you come back, you search for us, we search from you, then we're going to talk about good stories. But unfortunately, many of them did not come back. Many of them did not.
In the skies above World War II, a select group of pilots emerged as legendary fighter aces, dominating the dogfights and shaping the course of aerial warfare. These men, from all sides of the conflict, honed their skills in the most dangerous of arenas, outmaneuvering enemies, pushing their planes to the limits, and relying on sheer courage. Their victories, counted in downed enemy planes, masked the peril they faced in every sortie.
Among these brave pilots was Joe Peterburs, a skilled aviator from the 20th Fighter Group who flew 49 missions and logged 269 combat hours.
My 49th mission was on the 10th of April 1945, and we were escorting some 450 B-17s to target in the Oranienburg area of Germany. I was flying high cover. The bombers dropped their loads, and just after they dropped their loads, we were hit by a swarm of ME-262s. I latched onto one of my eyeballs, and he was coming in after the B-17s. I had about 7,000 foot altitude advantage on him, so I knew I'd be able to catch him. So I rolled over and started down after him with throttles wide open, and I was able to pull in. I was doing well over 500 knots when I pulled into his 6 o'clock position, and there fired several bursts and got some hits in his left wing. He rolled over and started down to the deck. He disappeared into some clouds. So I saw this airfield, it was just loaded with aircraft, and so I started making some passes, and I destroyed 5 aircraft on the ground and set a hangar on fire. And on the last one, I was coming in on the FW-200, which is a Condor, a 4-engine aircraft. And as I was coming into him, I felt a thud, and I blew the Condor. It blew up, and I was pulling off, and I felt another thud, and I started getting oil over the windscreen. And I made it up to 10,000 feet. So I had to make the decision whether to go east towards the Russians or west towards the Allied forces that were fighting in Magdeburg. Magdeburg was about 80 miles away, but I decided to go, and I thought I could make it. I was falling short. I got to a little town called Berg that was probably 20 miles away from Magdeburg, and I was down to up to 1,000 feet. And I thought, well, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to have to bail out. So I unstrap and I get ready to bail out, and then I see in my 3 o'clock position an FW-190 coming at me. And so I turn into him, and as he fired his rockets, and he missed, and my aircraft was burning already because of the engine, the overheating. By this time, I'm down to 500 feet, and I think, heck, I'm too low to bail out. I'm going to have to belly this thing in. And then I thought, all this is milliseconds going on in your head. I can't belly it in because I unstrapped, and I don't have enough time to strap up. I'll kill myself bellying it in at 150 knots or so. And so I decided I had to go out. I couldn't go out the right side that you're supposed to go out to, so the torque would throw you away from the aircraft. So I had to go out the left side, and by the time I got out on the wing and let go, I was about 350 feet. I let go and bang, I hit the knee end, my right knee on the horizontal stabilizer, and then pulled the ripcord and the chute open, and I swung once and hit the ground hard.
P.J. Dahl a P-38 Lightning Ace, survived numerous dogfights, harrowing bailouts, and 2 days adrift in a life raft, earning a reputation as a pilot with 9 lives and exemplifying extraordinary resilience during World War II.
I'm 5'5" tall, and when I strapped on that P-38, which had almost 400 horsepower, but total, 4 50 caliber machine guns and a cannon in front of you, I felt like the other guys didn't have a chance. And it's a funny thing in that business. You know good and well when you are on, you jump on one of the enemy airplanes, that gentleman knows you're there, and he normally calls out to his wingman or somebody, says, hey, there's a P-38 on. So you had to be very careful. You had to kind of shoot and get the hell out of there. I hit him and I rode him, and then I got out of Dodge. I got away and did that twice. The only reason I know that the airplanes were destroyed was somebody else was in my flight behind me, and they confirmed that they crashed. I never was a big promoter of running up a score or anything like that, but it doesn't surprise me. The guys that we had 40 aces in our group.
As a fighter pilot with over 7,500 hours logged in over 130 types of aircraft, Clarence Bud Anderson loved to fly. Anderson would go on to score 16 1/2 aerial victories in World War II, making him one of the war's few American triple aces.
We destroyed the Luftwaffe primarily by engaging them in aerial combat. Dogfights are like a card game. You know, each hand, you got to play the hand you got, right? They might be attacking you rather than you attacking them. We're coming back from this one mission. We'd been all broken up, you know, and I was leading a flight of 3 or 4 and another flight from a different squadron. Our group joined up, and I'm leading them home. I'm looking up ahead and down, and I say, oh, Jesus, there's a poor old B-17 way up there, and engine smoking and kind of staggering along. And I says, but hey, come on, guys, let's go over there and go down and take him out to the water. So just as he's going this way, here comes 3 ME-109s over here, bellied up towards us. They couldn't see us. They're going after the B-17. I'm sure they didn't see us because there was 7 of us. and I said, okay, guys, I'm leading this whole pack. I said, one of those is mine. And I'm in this turning dogfight with this guy, and we hadn't got into a concentric circle, you know, around, around, around. When you shoot a guy down, you want to get him right here, what we call 6 o'clock, right here, back here. Drive up there with 300 yards and fire. And when you have an enemy airplane, you've got to pull your nose through him, point ahead of him, and fire like that. You have to lead him. It's like shooting birds. You go through him, lead him, pow, and keep your movement. You don't stop your gun. You know what I'm going to do the next time? Next time I come into this guy and I'm a steep angle, I'm trying to pull him a lot of G to get in there, but I can't get behind him, you know, and I'm going to pull my nose through him. I'll be bellied up to him now. And after here, I can't see him. I'm going to pull through, estimate that lead. I'm back here, of course. And then I'm going to fire and hopefully get him so that the next circle comes. I'm pulling through pull right smoothly through him, so I didn't want him to get off here. Pull him there, fire the burst, and he comes out. When he comes out here and I can see him, he's streaming coolant. That hot dog, I got him.
World War II veterans made profound sacrifices, enduring unimaginable hardships and risking their lives to secure freedom and peace. Had they not done so, the world today might be a very different place. Their voices remind us that the cost of liberty is steep, but its rewards are enduring.
I think we've got to get people to remember the sacrifices that everybody made for their freedom, because they did. I mean, for instance, in the 8th Air Force, 26,000 lives were lost. 28,000 were injured. On our base alone, 845 guys died for our freedom. Had we not have been able to resist the Germans at that time, we would not be speaking English just now.
How many World War I stories does anyone know? If we don't continue with the museum and with the stories that we have today, the World War II will be long gone and forgotten.
I've been here 20 years, and I asked people, do they know about Iwo Jima? They never heard of it. Or they heard about any of the Philippine battle, and I haven't heard about it. So I think they should know, and give them a chance to know what it was like in World War II and everything like that.
Well, I don't think any of us would regard ourselves as the greatest generation. I think the majority of us just saw the battle against the Germans as a war that had to be won. So I think really we just devoted our energy to destroying the Germans, and of course in the event we won, and a very good thing we did.
My main objective in what I do is for children and youth to understand how important it is to know what has gone before and know what has been tried and not worked. That's what my objectives are when I'm 100 years old, and I hope to keep as long as I can do it, I will do it.
A toast to all the good people of the world.
As we honor these heroes, we owe them a debt that can never truly be repaid, but we can carry their spirit forward by striving for a world where peace prevails. Because of their stories, we pledge to ensure their sacrifices are never forgotten. The proceeding has been a Palm Springs Air Museum production in association with the American Veterans Center and Jones Agency.